Karpo Godina and Zilnik, welcome. Thank you for being here. Both Karpo and Zelimir have been making films since they were very young. Karpo has been working as director and also director of photography, cooperating with many directors of Yugoslav space, many of the leading directors, also Slovenian directors, and also being director of photography of his own films. Sadly, just a few long feature films, but happily many also short films. Zelimir Zilnik is making his films more and more every year. The number is getting really high. It's how much? Or do we don't care? We don't care and we...
I will stop soon.
Okay. Yeah, just waiting for the new one always. But which is most important, both of them, or each of them have a film expression, which is unique, not similar to anything we have ever seen or heard, and so we are always waiting for what's coming next. And why do we have you here together is because you both started your professional, at the beginning of your professional careers you came together and you made a feature film. Karpo was director of photography, Zelimir was script writer and director.
Ezt montirol sem ga tudi.
And montage, editing also, Karpo. And now to the first question. You were from Ljubljana, Karpo, and you're from Novi Sad. You were living maybe in Belgrade?
No, in Novi Sad.
Novi Sad. So you didn't go to cinema together, you didn't go to school together. Where did you meet?
Well, we met on a place which was for our generation and both of us very important, and that is cine clubs, what we call the Kino Klubi. So in the early 60s, we have been then 20, of course, and we started before we had any professional experience in making these amateur films, or someone call them today alternative films. So we met on festivals, and even in that very early time, we both have been quite, I would say, well received as the people who are a bit different from this Kino Club mainstream, but it is interesting that we have somehow a quite different cinematic approach to the pieces what we made, and it is still today. But in very few times when we cooperated together, that was very productive. So beside early works, long film, which was quite successful, or very successful, Karpo was the director of photography for my film, which is called Black Movie, Crni film, and it was also very well received, and it is even shown and debated today. And then he also stayed in Novi Sad for a few years in a company where we worked and made his very excellent films like Litany for Healthy People, and also this Gratinirani Brain.
Yeah, which we saw today. Yeah. Karpo, Zelimir was talking about
Okay.
Or Kino Klubi.
Lahko angleško, da bodo.
Okay. What I wanted to say was also, did you watch the same films at that time? Was the cinema in Ljubljana similar to cinema in Novi Sad? Did you talk about films you watched, and where did you watch it? And did you read the same books? Or?
No, danes smo malo, to rabi pet. Ne, ja, se sliši? Je to, dobro. Takrat je obstajalo področje tega amaterskega filma, ki ga danes mogoče tudi imenujemo neodvisen eksperimentalen film ali pa kakorkoli hočemo, ali pa drugačen film, in so obstajali festivali po celi bivši Jugoslaviji. Tako da je bilo to zelo močno razvito, ker takrat je obstajala tako imenovana v socializmu ljudska tehnika. In tu so se potem zbirali mladi in delali filme. In tako so se videla srečavala na teh raznih festivalih. Največji je bil v Puli, ki je bil na trdnjavi tik pred začetkom Velike Pule, tako da so hodili tja gledati te naše filme in se učiti Makavejev in tako dalje. In smo dejansko prinašali vedno neke nove smernice, kam naj gre film. Ja. Pa se mi zdi, da so samo Slovenci tudi.
Ne, nisem.
Ja, ti nisi.
With the cine clubs, there were also many festivals of this kind of different, could call it experimental, but rather call it different cinema, which were very important and very renowned, and they were going around these festivals, meeting each other over and over again, and also all the other important directors of that time. And one of the most important festivals of those was in Pula, on the Pula
na Trdnjavi,
on the fortress, just before the film festival in Pula, which is very...
No, tako da praktično Lordan Zafranović, cela ta generacija naša, smo se ukvarjali takrat s to malo osmičko in smo se tako spoznavali, ampak dejansko v vseh krajih te mogoče dežele in tekmovali med sabo in potem tako Zilnik verjetno iz zavisti, ker sem ga v Novem Sadu premagal, mislim, da sem vse nagrade tam dobil na njegovem področju, ne. Se je v nekem momentu potem, ko je dobil igrani film, prvi to je bilo leta 1969, zgodnja dela, ne, me poklical in je rekel, Karpo, dobil sem film, jaz nisem še režiral igranega filma, ne znam režirati, ti nisi še posnel igranega filma, ne znaš snemati, pridi, lahko nastane nekaj zanimivega. No pa potem, ker bi ti dali vprašala, pa bom kar še odgovoril, res smo napravili ta film v 18 dneh in so ga poslali v Berlin in je dobil takoj Zlatega medveda, se pravi najvišjo nagrado takratne Evrope praktično.
Okay, so the whole generation of filmmakers was then shooting on 8mm and going to these festivals that we mentioned and competing for prizes, and Karpo says that probably that is why Zilnik was envious of him. And when Zilnik got his first feature to make, he called Karpo and he said, Karpo, I got a feature to make, I don't know how to make features, you don't know how to shoot features, we should make something really interesting together. And they shot a feature in 18 days, went to Berlin Film Festival and got the Golden Bear. And and here I ask a question. How did you get this feature?
Well, just to add about influences we have had. In that old time of 60s, our former country was really very open in terms of cultural exchange and communication. So I remember in Novi Sad, where I live, and that is not the center of the Republic, it's a relatively small town, in ordinary cinema, I saw actually all the films from Italian neorealism, then all the films of French New Wave, and I remember the first time when I heard for the existing of Cannes Festival, that was in a normal cinema. I think 59, when the Black Orphée by Crni was awarded, and then the next week it was Alain Resnais film, you see. So we really have had a very open scene, also very early in ex-Yugoslavia. door has been open for experimental films of New York School. Now, about how I got feature film. That was when I was 24. It is also something what will describe this good moment. I would not say that all the time in that former country we have had this open cultural situation. There was upsides and downs, but when I was speaking about middle of the 60s, both of us, after making alternative films, we have been sort of either invited or get a possibility to start making professional short films. So Karpo made a few of them, and I made a few of them in Novi Sad, and it is interesting that this amateur practice and being promoted or criticized in the newspapers came to the people who have been leading professional short film studios. So they asked us, so then we had a competition on Belgrade Festival as a short film directors and in Oberhausen. And in '68, in Pula Festival, I just got invitation by a director of a big studio in Belgrade, Avala Film, to come to talk to him. For me, in that time, I said I was not 24. It was like if today Obama will ask me to be a godfather on the marriage of his daughter, you see. So I remember in Pula, there was a terrace where only these big sharks of the films had been present. We never could enter. I came there. He said, Zelimir, I have seen these ugly documentaries of yours, and you have been also awarded in Oberhausen just 2 months ago. Now is the time to come with a screenplay for your first film. I said, how come? He said, because big studios are giving to beginners each year some sort of try. Let us just see, can you? And I said, well, do you have a screenplay? I said, no. And I said, but he said, well, you must have something in your mind. I said, look, I was just filming student demonstration in '68. I have heard some of the stories, so maybe some of the stories what I heard, I will transfer it in film. So he said, well, it doesn't sound very good, but come with that material. So in the beginning of September, I came with a relatively rough script. He wrote it, he read it, and he said, oh, well, it's not very good written. No dramaturgy, no good personality, so I cannot give it to my art director, because art directors in that time have not been some police people. In Belgrade, that was Michis, a very good drama writer and a critic, then Slobodan Selenic, also a very good guy, and Alexander Petrovic, this big director. He was an artistic director. So General Chief said, no, I will not give them, you know, they have too much intellectual. But I am suggesting you let us go to the bank and take the loan, because we cannot send it even on a film foundation procedure. It is a provocative. He said, you have a lot of scenes without, sort of on the edge of sex scenes with naked youngsters, and then you have also a lot of quotation of early Marx, which is very provocative for that moment of socialism, because it is, you know, some very romantic speeches about liberty and realization of the human being. So he went in Belgrade bank, took a loan, and after 2 days I start collecting the crew. And Karpo doesn't know, he was sitting in Ljubljana. So some of the big cinematographers did not want to shoot. He said, it's not good script. And said, you really don't have anything nice prepared for us for light or whatever. And we have been also asking some of the leading actresses in Belgrade, like Milena Dravić or Snežana Nikšić. So they saw the scripts. They said, well, we have to walk half the time naked, you know. So then can you imagine, I'm just now describing the atmosphere. So I said to this Dragiša Đurić, director of Avala film, look, Kamera Dragiša, you are very much busy with many films in big studio, because in that time, you see, in Avala film, beside domestic production, they have been filming the whole saga of Nibelungen, you see, with Germans. Like here in Ljubljana, you have been filming these big spectacles with Italians, you see, because that is how the country was sort of in that time very much in. And I asked him, transfer that money in Novi Sad, in our studio Neoplanta, which is simple and small, and then we will realize it. So when I went in, she sent the money. In that time, a long film could not cost more than $150,000 because of the technique, 35 millimeters, cameras, lighting, and so on. So he sent the money. So that was this moment of freedom. This new production did not risk any money, first of all, and second, they did not know that I failed with collecting the crew, so I took a telephone and called him. And I said, look, come, you should make, because I really loved how he filmed, so I said, you should make something like Jonas Mekas or this new American film. He said, I never saw those films, but he succeeded in making it.
Lahko jaz kar malo še dodam temu, ne. Praktično, če me Zilnik ne bi povabil v Novi Sad, jaz mislim, da bi moja pot šla čist nekam drugam, na en drug način, tako da kakorkoli se moram tle prikloniti, ker mi je odprl ta pota južnega tržišča, kot bi rekli, ne, tako da smo potem s pridom tam eksploatirali. In takoj zatem so bili tu Čengiči, ki so želeli videti, da snemam, pa Zapranovič in tako dalje, da ne naštevam. In bil je en sjajen direktor te Neoplante filma, hiša, o kateri govori, je Neoplanta film, pa tudi tale z gugalnico, moj film je tudi produkt Neoplante film, da se videlo na špice, tako da smo delali praktično slovenske filme v Novem Sadu, kjer obstajata Svetozar Udovički, to je krasen starejši igralec, bil s trebuškom, dosti večji kot ga imamo midva. In enostavno sem kar en lep čas ostal spodaj in napravil praktično celo to serijo mojih teh statičnih kratkih filmov. In vse pravim, Bog ve, kaj bi se dogajalo z mano, kako bi šel. On mi je preusmeril življenje, počakaj še malo. Še moram malo korekturo napraviti, ker v Srbiji imajo piši, kao što govoriš, in je rekel, da je kar ne posnel Črne grofeja, to je Kami, pa ne Albert Kami. Tako da ga malo popravimo. In še, je tukaj noben ni iz Gorice, ne? Je tukaj? A, tam si, ja. Ne, ja. Kako da niste vi Sabotin pogruntali, kot so tile pogruntali tole Ciper, ko imamo Tito tam, ja. Viš, ste imeli zraven, vi niste imeli elektrike, vi ste imeli bakle, dobro, zelo podobno, no. In, ja, še, toliko, da sam še malo sebe pohvalim, da sem bil prerok v tem filmu, ki ste ga gledali. Jaz mislim, da sem postavil gugalnico točno na bodočno mejo, tako da deklica, ko se guga, ritko, ko jo zgubimo, je v Sloveniji, ko pride naprej, je pa na Hrvaškem.
Okay, so Karpo would very much, both lift your feet, just Karpo would really very much like to thank Zelimir for inviting him then to Novi Sad, because otherwise his life would have gone, we don't know where, but Zelimir knows. And because when he went to make the Rani Radovi, it's translated early works, yeah? Karpo stayed in Novi Sad and made a few more, these are not his words, but mine, really great short films. He called it the static films. It's because of the way he shoots. And then Karpo asked also that because in Nova Gorica, here near the border, we have the same flag mountain, same kind of flag mountain with Tito written on it, and that people there should make a flag mountain movie. But also that he was a prophet making this Pupilia Ferkeva, which we saw, because just about where the swing is standing, now the border goes, and the girl's ex is in Croatia, and her kids are in Slovenia.
Ja, še to, ta človek iz Neoplante, ne, je bil toliko širokogruden, da tisti denar, ki ga je tam imel, ne, sploh ni delal nekih razlik, tako da je tudi celo Naška Križnarja povabil in je posnel ta sjajen film Beli ljudje, ki ga skoraj nihče ne pozna, ampak to je treba videti, ta se še vedno nahaja v Neoplanti in to je grupa Ohobla takrat in je tudi celo njega pritegnutja noter.
The director of this Neoplanta film from Novi Sad was a very broad person. He also called to Novi Sad Naško Križnar, who made another really good film, White People.
Yeah.
No? Which we should see soon enough.
But
it's still in Neoplanta in Novi Sad, the film. So, I would like to add here that on this Vojvodina phase of Karpo, there has been a documentary made just less than a year ago. It's called Karpo Potnik, and Matjaž Ivanišin is the director. And from my perception, it's one of the best Slovenian films made in the last years. So if you get a chance to see it, you should. It doesn't show Karpo at all, but there is this dialogue between them starting the film. I don't know how sure. So this is really nice, something to see. Karpo, I would like to ask you, because so you came to Novi Sad.
Čak mene boš dost imela Zilnika.
Si prišel v Novi Sad, kako je bilo, how was Slovenia at that time? Was it somewhere to go away from?
V Sloveniji je bila situacija takšna, da so imeli monopol določeni režiserji, zelo majhno število, in so bili natečaji za scenarije javni in mislim, da sem predal takrat okoli 6 celovečernih scenarijev in mislim, da okoli 20 kratkih in nisem nič dobil. Potem pa je bil en anonimen natečaj, tam sem zmagal, ampak ko so zvedeli, kdo sem, me je glavni gospod, ki je takrat pač delal v te naši deželi, napravil je takrat, imam tako podatke iz prve roke, da direktno je penil in so uspeli tudi to eliminirati.
So we were all living in the same country, Yugoslavia, but Slovenia was a different story. There only few people were making films. The money was giving out on, kako se reče,
competition,
public competitions, and Karpo then wrote like, kaj si rekel, 6 or 20? 6 long films, 20 shorts, and never got to make a film, but then he got picked once in an anonymous contest, but when they found out who he is, he didn't make the film anyway.
Ja, eden od teh scenarijev celovečernih je sjajno bil tudi Dušan Jovanović zraven in tile točno fantje, ki so v Pupili Ferkver nastopali, vsak dan so nam prinašali, mi smo jim dajali naloge in so prinašali tekste. To je bil film Kralj Matjaž, ki obžalujem, da se bi bilo hudo, če bi ga realizirali.
Yeah, he would have made a film with these guys, who are all artists, writers, poets.
Yeah.
And maybe it would have been not so good to have real made it. And okay, so Rani Radovi, but then the situation changed, or when did it change in Yugoslavia or in Novi Sad? What happened?
Well, just to add something what will be somehow referring on your topic, like Otpor resistance. When you say that, you see, and try to apply it on the film, it is a bit tricky because, you know, film is nothing else but light and shadows, you see. So the film, it is not a resistance like Vietnam against America or Angela Merkel against Schroeder or Alenka against Janez. So film is actually, I would say, more fragile. And I remember when we met for early works, of course that we have been both in a sort of very stressed situation, make a film without any experiences. We did pass through making a short films, but this is something else. But what we both have had absolutely very firmly in common, that we want to make something different. And we do want to make a sort of Otpor and resistance to this older generation and mainstream Yugoslav film industry. Although in that time, mainstream Yugoslav films have been very good, quite famous, and a quite big number, about 10 good directors, have been not only recognized at home but also abroad. So when we talk together, what would be mostly like to be an effect of the film? To be hated by Živojin Pavlović, Makavejev, and Saša Petrović. And that we did. That we did. You see, Živojin Pavlović, our greatest director, actually one of the most productive, is like Balkan Buñuel. He loved my short films, and he came to me and said, Zelimir, this is how do you say, Zagstrasse, Kul de Zag.
Slepa ulica.
Slepa ulica. And Makavejev, he came to us and he said, what are those texts which are you using? We are using letters of Karl Marx to Ruge. He said, oh, that's so good, so good. I will take some other things. And when we said, look, Makavejev, we have registered the all works of Karl Marx in this urgency for outer rights, we left only the role of work in transferring the monkey into the man. And tomorrow he came with the paper. He said, I have registered that book. I will take it. So actually, when we finished the film, for us, the greatest success was not Berlinale. The greatest success actually was this hate and tension and envy of. So you see, also when you see this Karpo's film, Gratinirani
Mozak,
yeah, brain, so we will say, what is the resistance in that film? And I will say a great one. First, this aesthetic one. He made something different. In a moment where we had a quite free situation for social critic, and many of short films start being very social critical, because the society and politicians did not have much fear of it in that moment, you see. And then he came with this piece, which is out of everything, which is a big surprise, but aesthetically, it is so strong that it is a piece of new life produced by him and these people. But inside, there is a great content. What is the content? Content is actually self-reflecting and sort of self-critique of the role of young generation in society in that time. Because young generation was very much supported and I would say also used in propaganda of the regime, like the future is yours, you will take all destiny in your hands and so on, you are so great, you will just inherit us. And now he made a film where he shows that the young generation is also very lost. And only what she believed, it's a body and some sort of sexual energy. And of course, Coca-Cola.
LSD.
And so it is, you will see one of my films today. It is about the lady who is 101 years old. So you will ask, well, what is the resistance? What was, for me, magnetic to do it? For me, magnetic was, after making a lot of critical films and films which have been very provocative, the question was, could I now be sort of good enough and creative enough to make a film with someone 100 years old just sitting, not moving? And would I find a way that it can sort of come to the public? But of course, inside is the how would I say, the main content, and that is that in this Balkan, ex-Yugoslav situation and post-communistic situation we live, we all the time forget all the past and transfer it, and everybody speaks his own history, thinking, and especially politicians proclaim themselves that the history becomes with them. At once, you see the old lady, 100 years old, she said, I will tell you, Zelimir, the hard time started in 1915, when my father died, and I still remember. He felt as Austro-Hungarian soldier on the Italian front, and then I will tell you, year by year, step by step, name by name, what happens up to today. So, you see, so it is, and I thought, when we made it, nobody would like to see it, maybe some sentimental people, but when we start showing it, as this uniqueness of the piece, like his 45 years old short film, it has some sort of feedback. So can you imagine, we show that film, what you're going to see, and then some people from television came, asked me, look, Zelimir, yeah, that was so good, can you make a TV serial? And it is running now as a TV serial on various television in ex-Yugoslavia. So you see, that is, this what you said is resistance. That is actually being different and somehow being out of mainstream. Why? Because in film, video, and culture, in Europe especially, mostly it is financed by the state. So the 90% of those products are nothing else but propaganda. Propaganda in all ways, you see, either from commercial propaganda to political propaganda. So to make something different, that is this, what you would say, resistance, but I would say maybe more like small piece of original creativity, which is not only by director, but also done by the people in front of the camera. Because Karpo would not have that material if this group already did not exist and had its own struggle in society. They have not been recognized. So this picture, this image is what he brought. That was maybe the first time that they appeared publicly, you see. So we are, when you say film directors making films, we are just a part of this energy, not like a gods, not like writers or maybe painters. They just take a color and make Venera coming from the sea.
But then there is also the audiences, or the possibility that audiences get to see these films. Karpo, did the government or did they put your films in the bunker? Also Zilimir's. This is something I think that mostly people who are not from Yugoslavia imagine that just one mention of some kind of revolution, freedom, or naked skin would put the film in the bunker. How was it maybe in the 60s, maybe in the 70s?
No, jaz mislim, da tukaj bo dejansko Željko, ker tudi sem bil na njegovih procesih in tako dalje, bo imel več za povedati. Leta 1972, tukaj povem letnica, je prišlo do tega, da so se izmislili to besedo, da je to pač črni film, črni val, in so nam bunkerirali vse filme, potem je šla iz Neoplanti, ker se je zamenjalo vodstvo okroženca iz njihovega centralnega komiteja, da jaz 10 let ne smem delati, ostali so tudi dobili razne stvari. Tako da jaz sem na srečo dobil to prepoved za režijo, ampak ker sem znal tudi snemati, sem se lahko preživljal dalje. Potem sem 30 let kar intenzivno delal, mogoče še najintenzivnejše. Medtem ko ostali so morali pa kar ven, tako da Makavejev je šel, Pavlović je prihajal v Slovenijo, Zilnik je šel v Nemčijo in tako dalje, tako da so nas popolnoma razpršili. In od takrat so se, to je bila na en način smrt zagona filmske pomladi jugoslovanskega filma. Zdaj, kako je šlo to detaljno, pa najkar Željko pove, tako da je zanimivo.
In 72, the term black film was said out loud, and their films, also films of other important people, were marked as black films and put into the bunker. But also the directors were
they have been forbidden to continue
for like 10 years or even more. So many of them left the country. Zelimir went to Germany, Makavejev also to America, and Karpo had this luck that he was also working as a director of photography. So he found work in Yugoslavia. But Zelimir would know more about this situation, how it was happening.
Well, we told till now that the Wolf we started in sort of early 60s, and through 60s and early 70s we had this freedom and possibility to make films. But for our generation, not only the destiny of new Yugoslav film, but also the destiny, I would say, of the whole construction of socialism somehow trembled and fall apart 20 years before falling of Berlin Wall. So when I met Karpo in 73, on my way to Munich, we would sit and drink coffee, and we would just whisper, we are not living in the country we used to live just 3-4 years ago. It was such a change. But it was change not only in Yugoslavia, it was change after occupation of Czechoslovakia, when the whole, I would say, ideal and proclamation and hopes of socialism completely collapsed because of course, Soviet Union have occupied Czechoslovakia, which was some sort on the way of this unique and open Yugoslav socialism. And then effects and feedback also came to our side, also through some pressure, direct ideological pressure from the Soviet leadership. Last 5-10 years, when I'm going to Russia, being invited on the festival often, I have even seen the documents and the books that they have decided in 70, 71 and 72, cut relationship with Yugoslavia, import just a small percentage of their films, make no co-production, because in Yugoslavia they have showed something what they call anti-socialistic tendencies, you see. And of course, still our country did not change economic system, the self-government, what we had, still did not change foreign policy, but the cultural policy was absolutely very much changed all over the place, from Slovenia to Macedonia. So not only filmmakers, but also theater, also festivals and institutions, they have been again under some sort of party censorship. But what is interesting, as I was in Germany, in that time in 73, 74, 75, I have seen that in the whole world came to a certain big shift to this, what we today call neoliberalism, starting of it, and actually some sort of movement against the freedom. In 60s, you have had big successes in civil rights movement in America. You have had also some organizations like Black Panthers and Students for Socialistic, for Democratic Society, which have been sort of leftist critic, formed in a struggle against racism and against bombarding of Vietnam. But in the beginning of 70s, all those organizations have been either shut down, closed, people have been put in jail, and Black Panthers have been shot, they have been killed. The same tendencies I have seen in Germany. There was a group, as you know, what we call now Bader-Meinhof group, but at the beginning it was a certain intellectual practicing some critique on some reminds of Nazi system, not Nazi system, but Nazi hierarchy in Germany. And in 74, they have been put in jail, 73, 74, they have been put in jail. Some of them said commit suicide, but I have been present when Sartre came in Berlin with evidence that actually Andreas Bader was killed. You see, he was killed in Africa. So that was this big shift. And also in film industry, you are young, so you maybe don't remember, but I see here some of our colleagues and Mr. Zeitz, who is a old film critic. So in 73, 74, there was a big shift in the whole film media of Europe and America from some sort of cinematography which was giving opportunity to various authors to come with their handwriting and their style. So just think, for instance, Friedkin, who made, I think, French Connection. He made French Connection. He then made Exorcist, and Exorcist was exploded by the public all over the world. So the first time profits have been not 50 million, but 500 million. Just the next few months, Spielberg, who actually made his first film, Duel. Yeah. It looks like a French noir film, but he made Jaws, and again it was, I don't know, $600 million. And then this guy who made, then came the third film, Star Wars, you see? That man made before American Graffiti, and he came with Star Wars, you see. So what is it? That is fairy tales, children comic books. So from that moment, the whole film market starts being very populistic, and it quite have ruined also the scene in the world, you see. So just think about Scorsese, who was a great director. He had few years a big crisis, not knowing how to continue, you see. So maybe this, what we had in Yugoslavia, what was quite strict and even brutal, but maybe we would somehow fade away, if not by the pressure of our politicians, maybe we will fade away in a few years by the pressure of the world. You just think about Machiavelli, who was one of the maybe the most creative guy in our group, although he's 10 years older. He went in France, then in Scandinavia, then in America, in Australia. But he never had made anything better than his film, what he made in Yugoslavia.
We have been talking for a long time now, Anna.
Yeah.
But maybe, no, I would really like to hear more, but I think that maybe we can watch your film some more. And a question, when are you going to work together again? Are you?
Mi smo posnela sva potem za zgodnji nedeli takoj sva posnela normalno, ker je Zilnik obseden z Marksom in Engelsom, smo posneli film celovečeren Kapital v podnaslovu Svoboda ali strip. Ta film ni ugledal luč sveta, je pa vse to, kar gledate po televiziji o tistih nemirih v Ljubljani, ki so bili pred Filozofsko, pa policija, pa vse to, to so najni materiali. Ne? To sem jaz kot kameraman, kot režiser.
In Hrvati isto.
Čakaj, bom šel, samo tu hočem navezati na ta film prvi, ki ste ga gledali zdaj, ko so začeli peti himno. Ne? Torej, podobno stvar smo napravili tukaj, da policija nič ni mogla, so pa samo Tito partija sklikali, tile naši junaki, vsi tile tudi, cela tribuna in vse, takrat časopis Tribuna, in se je tudi obneslo, tako kot se je tle obneslo. No, to je bila avantura, ki je neverjetna bila. Spustili smo se z enim Jamesom, kamionom, dve dekleti pa enega sjajnega moškega, so si izbrali tam iz delovskega razreda nekega Bosanca in so šli malo proučevati, kaj se dogaja po tej Jugoslaviji. In smo imeli zelo dobro koordinacijo, predvsem Zilnik imel vse naveze, da smo zvedeli, da praktično na tej poti bomo srečali Beogradsko revolucijo, Zagrebško pomlad in ljubljanske demonstracije. In na vseh teh lokacijah, ker je nenavadno, je uspel Zilnik inkorporirati igralce noter v tole, tako da nisi vedel, da so bili sestavni del te kompletno scene, ne? In tako imamo posneto in Beograd in Zagreb. Ta material je Zagreb na veliko izkoristil, da je videl, kaj se je pravzaprav dogajalo, ker tu so se naši igralci normalno pogovarjali, kot da so del te pomladi Hrvaške, recimo z Budišo, z Čičkom, to so bili še mladi fanti, vse skupaj, potem se Vlado dol vrgli in tako dalje in tako dalje. V Ljubljani pa tudi smo v tej tribuni napravili Boga in polne in tako da policija ni vedela reči, kaj ne z nami počne. Odgovor na to je, Željko je zdaj našel te materijale, ker precej so to nekako si razdelili, te stvari zdaj, ko zgleda večino našel. In možno je, če bom priden, da me bo vzel, da končamo na ta način, da pač vnesemo neke današnje nove scene v to strukturo in to bi bil, jaz mislim, en zanimivejših filmov. Sam ne vem, koliko je len.
Some of the English. First, after Rani Radovi, and also they made a film called Kapital, because Zelimir is obsessed, obviously, with Marx and Engels says Karpo. And but this film never saw the light of day. But then they went on tour with a little truck with two girl actors and a man actor.
Big truck.
With a big
James
truck.
Camion.
Yeah. With a big truck. Went Belgrade, Zagreb and Ljubljana, shooting the demonstrations, the revolution in Belgrade, the Croatian Spring and the demonstrations in Ljubljana, always putting the actors in the middle of the happening, talking, debating with the people who are the main protagonists of these happenings. And the material which was shot is now very much used in kind of documentation manner. So what we see from the 60s of these demonstrations is partially directed by Zelimir, so it's not also true. And but Zelimir also has now all of this material, and maybe Karpo and him will cooperate again, connecting this material with some new material. So this could be the future cooperation. Okay.
No, zdaj, če ima še kdo kaj za vprašati, po mojem smo jih že popolnoma dotolkli. Jutro je bilo dolgo, ne vem, kako so tu večina.
Noč je bilo dolgo.
Ja, in jutro je bilo dolgo.
Jaz bi eno kratko vprašanje, predvsem za Karpa, če leta 72 v problemih je šla analiza primera razpada balkanske države Marka Švabiča. To je bil oni preroški ludizem. Nisi nikdar imel skušnjave rodike, ali bi bilo to prehudno?
Ne, mislim, z Švabičem sem se družil predvsem, tako da sem sledil to zadevo, ampak...
Ker je scenaristično piše.
Sej. Stvari so se ravno takrat obrnile popolnoma v drugo smer, tako da je to ravno to prelomno leto 72. Drugače sem pa tudi, eden mi je napisal scenarij tudi za celo Čerca, ki je tudi bil odbit. Tako da sva sodelovala. In so te stvari noter na en način.
This was a question about cooperation with the writer Švabič, who made kind of texts which Karpo would also have made if life hasn't have turned different. Another question maybe? And mogoče? Then I would really very much like to thank our guests. Hvala.
No, jaz priporočam, če kdor ostane to noč tukaj, da tam pri svetilniku poskusi pijačo, ki se imenuje Dunjevača. Zelo za vas neznani izraz, kaj je to, ampak to je v slovenščini kutina, torej iz kutine napravljena pijača in priporočena.